Did you know that taxes are your single largest expense? Let me say that again. Taxes are your single largest expense. And did you know that on average, employees pay 40% of their income to tax? Small business owners pay 60%, big business pays 20%, and investors can pay as little as 0%. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're reviewing the book Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, How to Build Massive Wealth by Permanently Lowering Your Taxes. I have three main takeaways that I'd like to talk about. Takeaway number one, he goes through the overall picture of taxes. I think a lot of us, including myself, when I first read this, I've read it probably 4 times, I think now, because it's my favorite book on taxes. If you have a ranking of books on taxes, this is the top one. And I think that not many people look at taxes because it seems convoluted and confusing. But the cool thing about this book is he kind of takes a 30,000 foot view from taxes and says, this is what it looks like. And then we can jump into this part and then this part, and kind of breaks it down by section. So that's something that I really appreciate. Something that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, which Tom Wheelwright, who wrote this book, is actually an advisor. He's the CPA for Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, Robert said, when I was first listening to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this kind of hit me pretty strong. He said, the rich study the history of taxes. And I remember I was sitting on top of a cruise ship listening to the audio tape while my back was getting fried, and I got fried redder than a lobster, and I couldn't even walk for 2 days because it hurt so bad. I couldn't sleep. I don't know if you had sunburn that bad, but that's a side tangent. But I was listening because I was so enthralled with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he said the rich study the history of taxes, and Tom Wheelwright actually goes into the history of taxes and how they started and why they started, and that the purpose of taxes is actually to increase business and increase what the government wants. So it's an incentive structure is the way that taxes are formed. And if you look at it like that, you can say, okay, what is it that the government wants me to do? And they're going to give me an incentive for doing it, either in a credit or in a deduction or in some other way, right? Tom also says, he says this quote is really, really cool. He says, taxes are based on your facts and circumstances. Changing your facts will change your taxes. What do you mean by that? Well, he breaks down the cash flow quadrant that looks like this, right? And up in this corner is employee, down here is small business, over here is big business, and over here is investor. And he says that taxes are geared towards the right side of the quadrant over here to big business and investors. And the people who are employees and have small businesses, it's not geared towards them. And so what can you do as an employee? There's not much that he actually flat out says that. He's like, there's not much you can do to lower your taxes as an employee other than having more kids. But other than that, there isn't really much you can do. Now, being a small business owner, you can actually start acting like a big business. You don't necessarily have to have the amount of employees that big businesses have. You just have to take advantage of the business code. And that goes into takeaway number 2 of pay less tax legally. And he stresses the legally part. He says there are tons of people. He's like, I know tons of people that show that they're getting paid less, have different bank accounts, and they're doing it illegally, and they might get away with it for a little while, but eventually they get caught, or they just have to sneak around. But if you're doing anything big, then you have to do it legally, or you end up like Bernie Madoff in prison for the rest of your life, right? And so how do you pay less tax legally? Well, actually, and he says this in the book, 99.5% of the tax code is actually written to lower your taxes. I don't think you probably knew that. Fun fact, he actually says it's like 17,000 pages in the tax code, and only 17 pages is dedicated to raising taxes, to increasing taxes. The other, 17,005 pages are written to lower your taxes. And all of those are in the forms of business credits, business deductions, different types of income. The way that you make the money are taxed differently, location, and your obviously your personal credits, right? And we can have an entire video breaking down what are the different types of business credits and deductions and all that stuff, but I'm not going to go into that. You have to read the book to find out what are the specifics. But there are many, many, many ways, right? 17,000 pages worth of ways that you can legally deduct your taxes, which is really cool. Takeaway number 3 is choosing your own tax advisor, right? The last chapter, I actually really appreciate this because I didn't have a CPA at the time, and I didn't know who to go with and who to trust. And he actually goes through step by step how to choose the right tax advisor. And he says that one, you need to meet with several different CPAs, right? Sit down with them. Next, there are 2 parts in the interview that you need to be looking for. Number 1, you need to look at the questions that your advisor asks you about your situation, and getting to know you and what your goals are, and then how they explain or what their process is. So they explain, oh, we do this, this, and this with new clients, and our goals for you are to achieve this point. And so you're hearing not only their questions, but also explaining what it is, what their process is for doing work with clients. The other part to the interview is questions that you ask your advisor. And he says, ask about their tax philosophy, and also what they recommend you doing in your circumstance and how you can lower your taxes. And he says, if your advisor's like, hey, listen, the more money you make, the more taxes you're going to pay. That's kind of how it works. Say, hey, appreciate it so much. Thank you for your time. And leave, because that guy doesn't know the tax code. And he explains this concept of, he says that there are different kinds of tax advisors. There are 2 main types. There's the one type that says, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's risky. If you do this to lower your taxes, that's going to draw a red flag. That's going to draw a red flag. The people who are saying that you're going to draw a red flag don't know the tax code. They don't know what you can and you can't do. And he says, rather than saying it might draw red flags or yellow flags, I just learned to understand the tax code and say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. And I know every single step in between. And so those are the tax advisors that you want to have under your belt, are the people who know the tax code and say this is how you can lower your taxes legally, and versus the people who say this is going to draw a bunch of red flags. There are many, many more lessons in this book. I could talk an hour and a half about all the different lessons that I've personally learned and implemented. There's a reason why I've listened to it over 4 times, because every time I listen to it, it gives me a refresher on what I can do to lower my taxes and how to have a better business overall, right? My challenge to you is twofold. 1, go ahead, read Tax-Free Wealth this week. I have the link to the audio if you'd like to listen to it, or the book down below. Go ahead, read this book, analyze it, look at what you can do for your own business. And then second, read 1 educational book every single week. I promise you, it will change your life. As you start to read these books, you're going to learn more and more about how to what to do in certain circumstances. There's an old phrase that goes, a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. You have the world's knowledge at your fingertips to read and to listen, and we might as well take advantage of it so we can learn the lessons of other people and be wise men and learn from them. Okay, guys, appreciate the video. If you have any comments, I'd love to hear them below. Until next time.